In the demonstration of compassion, just before we started, Caroline came up to me and said, "Martin, are you going to be okay talking to a room full of health people?" Because it's predominantly health people, not exclusively. So I said, well, I am, because I'm getting used to that in the role that I perform in London. So I'm sort of not bilingual, but I can speak a smidgen of health now.
Very well, by the way.
Thank you very much. But I'm not a midwife, a nurse. My background is not social care, so I've never been in a room full of so many people from that professional background, and that is a bit scary, I have to say. And I won't tell you what my background is. You'll have to guess. Some people will know, but you'll have to guess. You can tell me afterwards. And the other thing is, of course, and the other speaker's going to find this as we go on, it gets harder actually towards the end because you hear the other people and you want to change what you've written. So I may not stay on my script. One thing I definitely want to pick up, because I shall forget this, because I think it's a theme that's coming through. I say this in Ealing, and people think I'm being flippant, and it's semi-flippant, but there is a really serious point to it. If I had my way as chief executive, I would only recruit people based on their behaviour and attitude. That would be the sole criteria for appointment. And at the end of that, if they pass those tests, I would then say, what are you? You know, what do you do? And if they're a planner, I guess it's probably a good idea to put them somewhere in planning. And if they're a children's social worker, it's probably a good idea to put them in children's social work. But really, it's the behaviours and attitudes of staff that actually make my organisation work. And when it works at its best, it's because of those things, not because they're fantastically skilled strategic planners or lawyers or accountants and the rest of it. So that's really important for me. And I also think I am in charge of a caring organisation in the broadest sense of the word. So, you know, I'm the most senior person in an organisation that's responsible for the health, well-being, prosperity of 340,000 people, and I think that's caring in the broadest sense of the word. So I think that is what we're about, and I think that's what all public services are about. So my real proposition is that I think the future of public service lies in value-led organisations, and what I mean by that is organisations whereby routine decisions and actions are determined more often than they are now by values, behaviour and judgment, and less by rules, process and procedure. And the reason I think we need that shift is because we are at the end of what I call the performance management era. Now I'm talking principally from a local government perspective, but I think this pervades all public services. So for the decade, probably 15 years leading up to about 2011, we were defined by performance management. You're all familiar with it. PIs, targets, action plans, measure, you know, the lot, the whole panoply of stuff. It all seems quite normal to us, I have to say, because that's what we do all day. It probably didn't exist before about 1995. Now, I'm not arguing to do away with it, because I think it has brought about a massive change in the performance, productivity and outputs of public services. So I think we need it. But like all of these things, there are unintended consequences. And I think two of the unintended consequences are, firstly, we put too much faith, collectively, this is society, not just us as professionals, we put too much faith in performance backed up by regulation. And it can only do so much. It can do a lot of good and it can only do so much. So here's a list of, off the top of my head, of sectors, industries that are highly regulated and are accompanied by a bespoke regulator populated by people like us who really care about the industry they're in. So energy supply, water supply, telecoms, banking, social care, healthcare. Not one of those sectors has been able to avoid massive failings, scandal and reputational damage and loss of public confidence as a consequence of that. Despite the best efforts of everybody working in it, no one sets out to have a mid-staffs or a child death, but it happens anyway. So these things don't actually work as well as we need them to work, and I don't think they ever will. So the answer to some of the things we're trying to do is not more regulation, it's something different. I think it's the sort of thing that we're talking about together today. And my view is, the fact is that the best and most effective guarantors of quality, safety, and I would call it the citizen experience, because a lot of my customers are not patients, are the staff that work for us. You know, that day-to-day interaction at whatever level, you know, even in my work, even if it's people collecting council tax, the way they ask for the money for people makes a big difference to whether we get it or not, and how people feel about the council at the end of that transaction. So I think it's vital that we pay more attention to that and give more weight to that aspect of our work, because I don't think we've done enough. I think allied to that is that in the pursuit of efficiency and the identification of best practice, again, which are good things in their own right, they've tended to stray into standardisation and orthodoxy. So it ends up there's only one right way of doing things. And I think one of the consequences of that is we've stifled innovation, not at a strategic level, not some massive whole systems change, which the NHS is fond of, but just the little changes that happen at practice level. And people are less able and less willing and less confident about doing that, because there's much more safety in complying with a process that has been endorsed by somebody else than trying to experiment and risk that it might actually go a bit wrong. I mean, there needs to be some parameters around this. So I think we've disempowered our own organisations, we've disempowered our own staff, and I think that's a shame, and I think we need to bring some of that back. And as a consequence of all of that, and this is a theme that the previous speakers have come up with, I think we've lost some of the emotion, passion and humanity from essentially what are people-to-people organisations. And I think that's a tragic loss. And if we've lost those things, then we lose compassion as well, because that's I looked as well as Wikipedia. We've all done the same job, haven't we? I'm speaking about this, I better know what it means. But clearly, that humanity, I think we've driven it to some degree out of our places, and we need to bring it back, because it's a fantastic quality in its own right, and it's crucial to the services that we provide. And again, that's true whether they are care services per se, or whether they're just people-to-people services provided by public service organisations. So we need to get some of that back and gain some of that ground. And again, I guess finally, in terms of the analysis, we collectively have also, of course, fallen into that trap that we always do, that we treat organisations like machines, and our language and terminology is a language of machines, and they're not machines, they're social structures populated by sentient social beings who don't respond to levers and incentives quite in the way that machines and robots and computers do. And I think we forget that at our peril. I don't know if any of you have come across a book by Dan Pink called Drive. Yeah, there's a yes there, which is good. And in that, I can't do Einstein, I'm afraid, that was good, or Churchill. But in that, he defines 3 intrinsic sources of motivation at work. And none of them are to do with money, that won't surprise you. But they are mastery, autonomy, and a sense of purpose. And if people have those 3 things, they will outperform any other group of people incentivised by other things. And in the modern workplace, largely not our workplace, the one that's most difficult to provide is sense of purpose. There are many, many jobs in the modern world where you can't really associate yourself with some greater end to your work. You're doing something fairly mundane, and you get paid and you go home. I think all of us in this room have a massive advantage, because the work we do has a fantastic sense of purpose. It is a noble purpose. So the most important of Dan Pink's 3 elements exist in spades in all the stuff that we do. And I think we need to do more to capitalise on that. So when I talk to staff at Ealing, and this is true whether they work in social care or whether they're a highways engineer, they care passionately about what they do. They really, really care about it. And there's something that we do as organisations to drive that out of them and diminish it under the weight of management control, performance assurance. And I think we've got to reverse that trend. We can't throw away performance management, but we need to balance it with the humanity and the compassion that I think most of our people want to exhibit if we give them the chance to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin, for highlighting the sense of purpose and the common values between our 2 systems.